flat surface upon which we live is situated within and is a part of a half-full sphere. The half-full sphere itself is situated within an autosphere, forming a unit of spheres. This unit of spheres is but a single cell within the body of an immensely large creature. There are around 100 subterranean levels beneath our feet, all the way down to the bottom of this half-full sphere. If we would imagine the raw foundations of this half-full sphere without the oceans and land masses of each level, we would be looking at around 100 levels with 25 km thick floors and 75 km high pillars supporting each level. And if we add the land masses, the oceans and seas to the raw foundations of each level, we would be looking at pillars that stick only around 60 km above sea level up to the ceiling of that level. The land masses that we see on our level are in fact the petrified remains of gigantic dragon-like creatures of more than 1,000 km long, various marine life animals of several hundred kilometers long, humanoid titans of several kilometers tall, and other giants. The so-called continents are in fact a single uninterrupted mass of land consisting of the piled up corpses of those huge petrified and fossilized creatures, and the only reason we call them continents is because there are oceans and seas preventing us from seeing this uninterrupted landmass. By the process of petrification, the various bodily tissues turn into various minerals and ores. The skin and flesh of those creatures turns into sandstone, limestone, granite, and other types of stone. The blood turns into iron and other precious and semi-precious metals and stones. The bones of those petrified creatures turn into the vast amounts of crude oil that is underground, which is also the source of all the petroleum and plastic products of today. Even the saline waters of the oceans and seas were once the bodily fluids of those gigantic creatures. The fact that the level of salinity of the individual inland seas vary is the result of the fact that each of those inland seas is the bodily fluid of a single 1,000-kilometer long creature. The process of petrification and fossilization served several purposes, one of which was to introduce land masses to all of the 100 levels within this half-full sphere. This was done by the initial creation of those gigantic creatures and by killing them once they grew big enough. Their corpses were simply piled up on top of each other and were petrified and fossilized, creating the land masses that we have here and on all of the subterranean levels. The petrification and fossilization also made sure that the present day smaller creatures such as ourselves have the minerals needed to survive. Making sure that we can survive is key in ensuring a high level of productivity in this so farm of a world. Another important purpose that the processes of petrification and fossilization serve is to hide the existence of those gigantic creatures and to eliminate the fear factor of knowing that we live upon their corpses. If their bones wouldn't be petrified and fossilized, they wouldn't be turned into crude oil, and we would be scared to death by the very sighting of such giant skeletal remains. The mountain ranges across the world are in fact the petrified and fossilized corpses of gigantic creatures, some of which are over 1,000 kilometers long. The Atlas mountain range in Morocco is a good example of such a gigantic being. It was a dragon-like creature with a length of around 1,500 kilometers. This particular dragon was one of the last dragons that was killed, and therefore its corpse is on top of the other gigantic corpses and is therefore relatively easily recognizable. See the video from the link for that particular dragon. There are several other such gigantic creatures that can be seen all over the world. In fact, all of the land masses are the piled up, petrified and fossilized cadavers of those creatures. The levels below us are no exception, and all of their land masses were once living beings too. Each of those creatures weighed billions of metric tons, and the soul of each of those creatures weighed millions of metric tons. The main reason, however, why those gigantic creatures needed to be killed and replaced with numerous other species of smaller size is a very interesting one, but it would be a topic for another video. This entire half-full sphere with all of its 100 levels is, among other things, a slaughterhouse with the souls of all living creatures being the final product. It has been a slaughterhouse from the beginning of its existence, and it will be one until its end. Another grim fact of reality is that we live upon the petrified cadavers of gigantic creatures. The land masses we see are their piled up corpses, which were petrified and fossilized shortly after they were killed and started to decompose.